Welcome to the Life's Best Medicine podcast, where we are finding hope and healing one episode at a time. No appointment needed, no rubber gloves, and no coping. Just a healthy dose of life lessons to help equip you for this wild journey we call life. Hey everyone, this is a friendly reminder that we are here for entertainment purposes only. We may not even be that entertaining at times, but this is not medical advice. Talk to your doctor, check with your healthcare professionals before making any lifestyle changes or medicine changes. What we're talking about is our clinical experience and what we've seen. And so if you really want our advice, you can consult us. You can actually consult me as a doctor, or you can consult my guest and get all your questions answered. But we can't give free medical advice because we can't pay our bills with that, but we can help to educate you a bit and allow you to think a little bit. And always reach out to your medical professional before making any lifestyle changes. Thank you. Hello and welcome back to the Life's Best Medicine podcast. I'm having some fun today. Gosh, all kinds of good things are happening. So I hope everyone's having a great year. Let me get my water out of the way here so it looks like I'm doing something legit. But hey, I just want to do an impromptu podcast. I had a little break at lunch and just wanted to talk about the importance of exercise. When we talk about life's best medicine, there's so many factors involved. We've talked about, from the great Ben Bickman, we talked about these 5 important things that we can do to make our health better. Number 1, don't be stressed and tense and run around like an idiot all the time. So I owe Ben my life a little bit on that because I was working 18-hour days and had crazy life and all that kind of stuff. Number 2, get enough sleep, right? Sleep, really important. That's really important for getting your body recovered, getting the stress hormones controlled, getting your insulin under control, and just being a nicer person. Like, you're grumpy if you don't sleep. We all know that. If we don't get our little nap in, or we stay up too late one night, and that's a problem. Next, exercise regularly, get out to the gym. And we're going to talk about that part of it today. It's the middle finger that I'm holding up right now. But exercise, a lot of people say that about exercise. They don't like to do it. I'll do all the other stuff, but I don't want to exercise. Next, watch your alcohol and smoking. Both affect metabolic health. And the last one is what we talk about: eat real food, low carb, keto, paleo, cut out the processed food, vegan, whatever you want to do, carnivore. So all these are really important things. So as you know, the host, the sponsor of this podcast was Simply Snacking. We've had a great relationship. They're having a change of ownership and they're kind of retiring and doing different stuff. So I reached out to a few companies that I believed in, because I only want this podcast sponsored by products I either use myself or recommend to my patients. So that being said, the great Ben Bickman and his brother Joel at Health Code, who have been stellar, they're stellar people and they're doing great stuff. They've helped out my patients. They've sent free samples to people that needed it. I was doing some community work in Vacaville, and first person I called was Ben. He goes, no problem, I'll send them, because these people had terrible diabetes, couldn't get their sugars under control. And I said, hey, Ben, look, this is not a population where you're going to make money, but would you be willing to send some samples in? And he sent a ton of samples to help them get on track, to get rid of all the junk and all the terrible stuff in their snack room, the donuts and the cake and the pretzels and all that, they had, it was horrible. Like, all the Monster drinks and Gatorade, and and these poor people are struggling with diabetes. So Ben was nice enough to send samples in, and so I'm honored to have them as a sponsor of this podcast now, because these guys, when I reach out to them, they go, okay, they didn't ask me how many numbers, how many downloads, how many followers you have on social media. They go, hey, Brian, if you're doing it, we believe in you. So that's what I want. That's exactly what Simply Snacking is. So I'm forever grateful for them getting this podcast off the ground. And my wife is happy to have a sponsor, so that we're not just funding it, and our kind Patreon supporters that have been really helpful. That really, really makes a difference, because I really want to get these stories out to everyone, and I really want to impact lives. And so we're going to do some other things to keep the podcast rolling. I think we have some t-shirts in the works here. Some people have asked for some bling, and so that will be fun, with some good positive messages that we're trying to promote. So hopefully you can wear that when you're working out, when you're getting out there. That's a few weeks down the road probably, but it's kind of cool. It's exciting to see that, to see the little logo out there that we designed. And so it'll be fun. But really, I'm deeply indebted to Health Code just for jumping in and saying, okay, we'll take over. We got this, you know. And so we're going to have a discount code and a link to their website. So this is unofficial. They're not officially sponsoring me yet, but it's a done deal pretty much. We give our word and that's it. So anyways, use health code. It's gethealth, GETHLTH.com. We'll have links at the end. And they're giving our listeners a 15% discount on your first order. And it's MetHealth, METHEALTH, which stands for metabolic health. So anyways, that's just the starter. So let's go back to Ben Bickman and his stuff. So the big one, the big middle finger is exercise. You know, that's the third one in. And so it's really critical. Exercise, people do not realize. And of course, when I started doing low carb 4 years ago, talking about this stuff, everyone said, you don't have to exercise. You're going to see it online where people say, you don't have to exercise. You lose weight on keto and you're fine. And that's great. But then people like Ben Bakikio came along, and Ted Naiman, and all these other, Sean Baker, all these people are saying, look, exercise matters. And so, yeah, exercise is a waste of time unless you care about certain things. So let me run through a quick list of some of the things that I've seen just in a recent journal article talking about the benefits of exercise. Yes, getting sweaty. Yes, sometimes pushing yourself a little bit. You know, there are definite emotional benefits. There's definite health benefits. So let me just run through this list. I hate reading lists usually. Hopefully I don't need my reading glasses today, but so here's the benefits of regular physical exercise. Lower risk of all-cause mortality, which us docs care about. We don't want our patients dying. It's bad for business. Number two, lower the risk of cardiovascular disease mortality. I think all of us kind of care about that. That's one of our biggest health risks. That's the biggest killer we have. So we can lower our risk dramatically. There are studies showing 50% decrease in mortality with regular exercise. Lower risk of cardiovascular disease, including heart disease and stroke. Lower risk of hypertension, lower risk of type 2 diabetes, especially when combined with a low carb diet, which all of us are yapping about. Lower the risk of adverse blood lipid profiles. We can improve our cholesterol. I see it dramatically improve with exercise, decreasing the inflammation, inflammatory markers. Lower risk of cancer. I don't think any of us are really excited for cancer, specifically breast, bladder, colon, endometrial, esophageal, kidney, lung, and stomach. Next, improve cognition, right? If I had a pill that can give you all these things, you'd be lined up and I'd be a multimillionaire. I'd be retired. Wouldn't be doing a podcast. I'd be in Jamaica or something chilling. But unfortunately, I still have to work. Next, reduce risk of dementia. None of us want to be demented. It's one of the worst things you could possibly have, right? Improve quality of life. I don't know anyone who wants a worse quality of life. That's why you're listening to this podcast, hopefully. Reduce anxiety. If you're struggling with anxiety, go and exercise. Guess the great irony is that people who are anxious don't have time to exercise because they're too anxious. And guess what? People who are fatigued don't have time to exercise because they're too fatigued. So if you exercise, your energy pops up. As a side note, my wife is doing a 30-day reset, and I've talked about it, I think, on the podcast. I'm having her on hopefully in the near future, actually in the next week or two. Mindy Pell's talking about fast like a girl, and my wife's doing a reset. Of all things, I was at the gym working out, and I see this lady walking. I go, oh my goodness, that looks just like my wife. Oh my gosh, it is my wife. She isn't known for going to the gym because she's never had to. Unlike me, she's doesn't have problem gaining weight by looking at donuts. So anyways, it was great to see her. And I said, what are you doing here? And she said, I had so much energy. I just felt like working out. So she did a little Ben Bakikio workout. And so that was pretty awesome yesterday. Next, reduce risk of depression. If you like being depressed, don't exercise, right? Improve sleep. You sleep better when you exercise. Now, the caveat to that is that you can get more, wired if you work out right before you go to bed. So you want to kind of pace that out. But if you can wake up 15 minutes early and get to the gym or go for a 15-minute workout or a walk or anything, it does improve your sleep. So that's important. Next, slowed or reduced weight gain, which is kind of important to most of us. So yeah, we can control our weight with some exercise and activities, but you are not going to outrun a bad diet, right? If you're eating terrible. So when they say, oh, exercise doesn't work for weight loss, yeah, if you eat more because you're exercising, if you look at how many calories you burn when you exercise, you're going to be very frustrated. You know, I just went on a long bike ride with a buddy. He goes, we only burn like 250 or 300 calories. Yeah. So people are doing that. Then they go have a Jamba Juice and they have the extra French fries that night. The math will not add up. So exercise helps by increasing your metabolic rate after exercise. So if you're doing high intensity interval training or you're working out at doing zone 2 training, as we've talked about, those things are all beneficial for our metabolic health. So next, weight loss. What these guys are saying combined with a calorie restricted diet, but we're looking at the low carb keto diet for getting the hormones correct, you know, dropping the insulin, dropping the stress hormones. Next, prevention of weight regain after initial weight loss. None of us have done that, gained your weight back because you got lazy and you hurt your knee. As a matter of fact, one of my great patients today, you know, over the holidays, he injured himself and he just got so depressed from the injury that he couldn't work out and he just kind of gave up and went on his way. And this is why we make the big bucks saying, hey, let's get you back on track. You're off course a little bit. I just read something the other day about, you know, it's some crazy thing like when you fly from New York to LA, the pilot is course correcting like thousands of times during that trip. So if you get off track early and you never course correct, you're going to be crashing and burning. So, you know, ending up in a different country. So the big thing is being able to say, okay, I blew it for a week. Okay, get back on track. I had a hard time yesterday. I messed up at breakfast. Get back on track. And that's going to keep you going. And exercise is a great stimulus for that because a lot of us say, okay, if I worked out today, I'm not going to eat terrible food to ruin what I did at the gym. So that's a huge one. Improved bone health, osteoporosis becomes a big issue, right? And also decreased risk of falls. If you don't have muscle mass, you lose your coordination, you fall, you trip, you can't get off the couch. So if you don't get out of bed, sooner or later, you don't get out of bed. Like you need a reason to get out of bed. So exercise is a great one. Improve physical functioning. One of the great tragedies is we're seeing seniors now that can't take care of themselves. No one wants to be a burden to their family. So exercise helps with that strength. One of the biggest indicators of whether you're going to go to hospice or not is whether you can stand from a chair on your own. If you can stand from a chair on your own, your chance of survival goes up dramatically in the 90 percentile range. If you need some assistance to get out of the chair, but you can kind of assist, you know, it drops to like 70%. If you can't get out and someone has to completely physically lift you out of the chair, I think your chance of survival is somewhere near 10%. So really, it's really critical. If you want to retire and have a good life, it's going to be so much easier for you if you maintain a healthy, active lifestyle. That's what we're talking about. You know, you know, we can't throw a drug that's going to make you get the benefits of exercise. All these things we're talking about. How many drugs would you need? From what I've read already. So lower risk of falls. I already kind of addressed that. Lower risk of fall-related injuries, which makes sense. If you don't fall, you don't injure yourself. You know, broken hip. If a patient has dementia, one of the worst case scenarios is breaking a hip. The mortality rate is higher than most cancers out there. So yeah, it is really important to improve metabolic health. As a matter of fact, Dr. Ben Bikikio in his book 15 Minutes to Fitness, which I'll put a link to that. It's great, and he really talks about reversing osteoporosis. I've had 3 patients in my practice personally, 1 male, 2 females, reverse osteoporosis with exercise and vitamin D, calcium replacement, things like that. So yeah, exercise is really important from that standpoint. For pregnant women, reduce risk of excessive weight gain, gestational diabetes, and postpartum depression. So exercise, walking, activity, all those things are beneficial. For people with various chronic medical conditions, none of us have those, right? Reduced risk of all cause and disease-specific mortality, improved physical function, and improved quality of life. So if none of those things matter to you, then exercise probably doesn't matter, you know? And there's some great data out there regarding interleukin-6, interleukin-10, which it's really an interesting thing. And what I've noticed in my patients is I can pretty much predict what someone's insulin level is going to be based on what their visceral fat is, which is a sign of metabolic disease. So also triglycerides. So it's very rare that I'm going to see someone with a ton of visceral fat that will have good markers, right? But I've seen people 400 or 500 pounds that have normal insulin. normal numbers because they can store subcutaneous fat. So the big problem is visceral fat, and that's one thing I had to really learn and figure out. You know, here at this practice, as a matter of fact, I have a patient, I've talked about him before. We reversed his diabetes from sugars in the 260 range and getting him to 100, below 100, and we had to stop all of his medications with a 4-pound weight loss. He started at 320 pounds. We got him down to 316 in almost a month, but we reversed his diabetes. How can that possibly be? Well, visceral fat, which is the fat around the organs, the dangerous pro-inflammatory, which raises the triglycerides and HDL and all your inflammatory markers and all the prothrombotic um, hormones and all that causes a problem, is all visceral fat. So if you get a lot of visceral fat, guess what? It inhibits muscle production. So it's hard to put on muscle when you have a lot of visceral fat. So you're kind of getting into this chicken and the egg type thing where the worse off we get metabolically, the more likely we are to gain weight, the less likely we are to put on the flame to burn it, which would be your muscle. So the more muscle mass we have, and Ben Bakikio, you know, I didn't believe him when he told me this, but one of the probably the primary indicator of longevity is muscle mass. So the more muscle mass you have, the longer you live. Guess what? Some of our sins can be forgiven if we have enough muscle. For, you know, like smoking and drinking. People can actually do better if they have muscle mass and strength. And so this falls into all these categories that we already talked about: decreased risk of diabetes, hypertension, you know, all these metabolic diseases that really, as the great Ben Bickman has said, is markers, you know, from elevated insulin levels. So why, instead of taking a drug for all these different conditions, why don't we work hard on metabolic health and making ourselves metabolically healthier so that we don't have to take a lot of medicines? Don't tell pharma I said that, but that is the reality of what we're looking at. And that's why we're excited to do metabolic health medicine. The Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners is doing great work. They're training, you know, there's trainers, there's nurse practitioners, there's PAs, there's, you know, across the board, people who are being educated on how to help you and us to get metabolically healthier. But I think it all does come back to those 5 things that Ben talked about. And, you know, really, when he told me that, it changed my life, because I said, I can't work 18-hour days and, you know, not sleep and not exercise and not spend time with family and have social connection, because, you know, we're just on a treadmill going too fast. And part of it, this podcast, Life's Best Medicine, is really for us to sit back and reassess. So maybe out of those 5 things, we can adjust 1 or 2 of them. Right. We may be going through a divorce right now. You may be having, you know, work, you know, stressful work stuff where you have deadlines and all those things. But if you can get it 15, 20 minutes of exercise, if you can lift up some heavy objects, if you can do whatever works for you for a few seconds here and there, walk up and down the stairs, what it does is tells your body that you're still alive and that you're trying to kill something. Really, that's, you know, from a historical perspective, the cavemen, if they sat around and weren't trying to kill anything, they were going to starve to death. So if you're in the middle of winter, you're trying to conserve your fats, right? Because you want to live through the long winter. But if you're exercising, your body assumes you're out trying to kill some kind of animal so that you can eat. So it frees up more energy for you to get to. So ultimately, those of us who struggle with weight, is that our body is just not getting to the fat stores good enough. So I mentioned interleukin 6, interleukin 10. So there are drugs that they're using for rheumatoid arthritis and for autoimmune disease, where they inject you with interleukin 6 blocker. So it blocks interleukin 6, which is really kind of a breakdown. It kind of, interleukin 6, if you can think about it in a simplified version, is that it starts breaking down your tissues and breaking down your bone, you know, osteoporosis type stuff. But interleukin 10 is the repair mechanism. So that will spike up and it will make you putting more bone on, put up more muscle mass on, and maybe help decrease some of the inflammation in your brain, around your nerves, all these things we worry about with you know, these chronic diseases that are a problem. Inflammation, chronic inflammation, is a huge problem. Acute inflammation is this yin and yang thing, where you're always releasing a small amount of interleukin 6. If you sit around and do nothing and you're sedentary, interleukin 6 levels go up and up and up. Interleukin 10, which is the response to vigorous exercise, and a threshold of interleukin 6. So basically, when you're working out really hard, you get inflammation in your muscle, you get an increase of interleukin 6. Your body says, uh-oh, there's too much inflammation. There's a fire going on. Let's do interleukin 10 to put the fire out, which causes a decrease of inflammation, decrease of breakdown. It actually helps you hypertrophy your muscle and your bone. So that's why doing a Ben Bikikyo type workout or high intensity interval training will release interleukin 10. So there are drugs that block interleukin 6, which we're using to decrease inflammation. But guess what the side effects are? Weight gain, diabetes, obesity, all kinds of issues. Because if you can't liberalize your fat with interleukin 6 and interleukin 10, you're in trouble. So people say, well, just inject me with interleukin 6 so I could release visceral fat to burn. Well, that's nice, but it will just circulate around the body and go back to the fat cells because you're not burning it. So you're going to have to exercise, just like I have people that say they take this steroids to put muscle mass on, but they don't exercise. Like, okay, what's that going to do? You're not going to hypertrophy muscle without exercise activity. So I have guys in my practice who make their testosterone triple by exercise, by losing visceral fat, which is high in estrogen, which is blocking some of the effects of the testosterone. So also looking from this physiologic standpoint, you start wondering like, okay, if I don't exercise, what's that going to do to my muscle mass over time? If you lose your muscle mass, all these things I listed at the beginning, you can go back and listen to them again, but they're all accurate. Decreased muscle mass is an issue. So if you're starving yourself and eating 500 calories a day, what does your body do? It says, oh, you're going to die pretty soon because you're not eating enough. Let me hold on to extra fat and store it in the visceral fat, right? Which is the dangerous place to put it because your body's trying to survive. It's trying to help you because it thinks you're definitely not a good hunter. So it wants you to live longer. But if you're exercising at least 4 or 5 times a week, then your body said, oh, you're trying to kill something, I'll release more energy for you to burn. So we don't want to store all that energy in the bank, which is our butt and our love handles. We want to burn that. So how do you burn the fuel? Exercise. So it does come back to exercise activity. Exercise will drop your insulin level, lower your cortisol level, it decreases your stress levels, and it helps your cognition. So and it does make sense. And the other genius around here is Jason Fung, and he's been talking about fasting, decreasing the energy that you're bringing into your body. And by doing that, it makes your body start saying, okay, I got to start liberalizing the fat that's stored there. Otherwise, if you keep getting paid every week, you don't have to go to the bank. So we want to go to the bank and start liberalizing some of that fat. The best way to do that, and what's interesting is this working out it releases this interleukin 10. Guess what else does? Fasting. So we hear about autophagy, we hear about all these different things, mental clarity. Anyone who fasts will tell you, oh my goodness, my energy's through the roof. And my mental clarity, I think of things that I didn't think of before. So exercise has a huge role, and also fasting for some people is real. Obviously, if you're thin and you don't need to lose weight and you're metabolically healthy, there may be other reasons for it as far as spiritual health and also for autophagy and for ketosis. But not everyone has to fast, so I want to make that clear. But the people who do, and especially if you're metabolically sick, you really take the load off your mitochondria and you allow your body to really focus on getting you healthy. It's really just, if you think about it, like insulin, your body is saying, that it just can't get rid of all that extra energy, and it's really a struggle when you have tons of energy floating around, because that extra energy has to be stored somewhere. So people are on a low fat diet and they say, well, I'm on a low fat diet, so I can't get fat. Guess what? Look at the food pyramid and look at us. We all gained weight doing low fat. I know I had Entenmann's cakes and I did Slurpees because it was non-fat, hot tamales, candy will say non-fat. It's healthy for you. It's not, because the extra energy you don't burn has to be stored as fat. And most of us don't know that our entire bloodstream could hold 1 teaspoon of sugar. Anything above that, you're going to be storing somewhere, right? Unless you're burning it. If you're working out, yeah, you can get away with a little bit more. But that's the point, is a triathlete can get away with a lot more than someone who's 500 pounds that doesn't exercise and is sedentary. So that's why life isn't fair when you see other people who can get away with eating stuff and they're not obese like we are. You start realizing, yes, there's an energy balance that we have to look at. So all these things do play a role, but no matter what, other than injuries from exercise, if you push it too much and you go crazy and, injure yourself and be the weekend warrior one weekend, then you don't exercise for 5 years, you're not going to reap the benefits. So really, it's about consistency. It's really about showing up. So many people just said, I just had to show up and walk and trust the process and move forward. As a matter of fact, you might see this on a t-shirt coming out pretty soon. But, take one step at a time, trust the process. Don't stress it. Don't worry about the scale. It will show up in time if you do the right things. Trust your body, trust physiology, and say, okay, I'm gonna take it easy a little bit, right? I have some people who exercise at such a high level that they throw their body into a cortisol excess. Their LDL's through the roof. Everything gets screwed up because they're working out such a huge intensity. So sometimes it's chill time, relax a little bit, spend time with friends and family, laugh, take it easy, listen to a podcast that's positive. You could drink Health Code since they're sponsoring me. And by the way, Health Code, when we talk about dementia and Parkinson's, it is my go-to for patients in nursing homes and that are it's hard to get people to change their diet and put them on a ketogenic diet. But if we can add a high calorie supplement that has coconut oil, all these good qualities for them, I will 100% stand up against any of the what they're using now. I don't want to name the products, but you know what they are for seniors. And you look at the ingredients that say hydrogenated soybean oil, high fructose corn syrup, all this terrible stuff that's affecting their brain. You think they're going to get better on that? Not going to happen. So, that's why I'm proud to have a Health Code as a sponsor on this too. I don't want to do a long commercial, but that's from the heart. That's exactly how I feel about it. And I have some people that, have other problems that it is a great solution for them. Some of us, it's not. Like for me, generally, I don't do shakes, but sometimes it may be nice in the afternoon. I have some samples coming, so I may mess around with that a little bit. So anyways, I just wanted to just throw out the benefits of exercise. I think if we're looking at life's best medicine, I think one of the best medicines you can have is exercise, especially if you can find a group sport or something that you can build a community. What they found in Italy, the places where they did lawn bowling, they all got along better. Longevity was better. Everything got better, and the other thing is, a lot of times with exercise, we build community. So if you're out hiking, you can test me on this. Most of the people are going to be happy. They're out there enjoying the sun and they're enjoying the day and they're out there smelling the fresh air and they're happy to be there and they'll wave to you and say hi and good morning. And it's a little different than rushing by each other in the city. And so you're going to attract to people like that. You'll find friends, go for long bike rides, which is what I like to do on the weekend with my buddies. And it also is a little bit of a motivator because if you gain a few pounds and you're tired and you maybe had too much to drink that week and, decide to eat a little extra carbs, you're going to feel not so well on that bike ride and your friend's going to have to wait for you at the top of the hill. It's a lot better to be the one waiting for them and say, oh, I'll just have a sip of water while you catch up to me. That's a lot more fun, in my opinion, but maybe I'm just a competitive person. But in order to be in that state, you're going to have to exercise a bit. You're going to have to work out on days when you're not riding your bike, and so all these things add up over time. So I just wanted to throw this out to you that the importance of exercise, that's up there with sleep and stress and all these things. And really all those other things that we talk about out of those 5 to live longer and a better quality of life, exercise interacts with all those things. So if you're drinking too much, you don't feel like exercising, you get lazy. And then you say, okay, I'll have cookies instead. I'll start tomorrow. And so we lose our motivation. So people who exercise regularly really do better in life. My patients who exercise regularly, I don't get to see them as often. And when I do, we're talking social stuff because they're fit and they're active and they're taking care of themselves. So, there are studies showing that sedentary lifestyle is worse than smoking. And anyone would sit on their butt all day and look at the smoker and go, look at that guy, he's killing himself, right? And so, we have to really take that into account. So I would say my advice is, just start somewhere. You don't have to run a marathon. You don't have to do heavy weights if you don't want to. Get light bands. Have 86-year-olds that are working out. I guarantee you, anyone who works out with Ben Bakikio, you can't keep up with the guy, and he's in his mid 70s, and he loves every second of it. He stayed fit his whole life. You look at pictures of him now compared to when he was 26, his muscle mass is about the same, and his spirit, his energy, his positivity, that all plays a role too. So exercise is important. So anyone who tells you it doesn't matter, you could just eat keto, you could shoot this drug, or you could shoot this medicine, there's side effects, there's problems, right? We have to put in the work. So start slow, be consistent. Persistence wins, being patient, saying, okay, I'm trusting the process. I'm going to take it one day at a time. If I gain weight tomorrow because I worked out hard today, well, it could be inflammation in your muscles. It could be a lot of different things. So don't worry about it. Don't let the numbers frustrate you. So we all get frustrated like that. And so just know you're having a physiologic effect, dilating the blood vessels to your brain. And we'll talk more about this with infrared sauna, jacuzzi, laughing. All these things have a positive influence on us. Sitting there stressed out at your desk all day is not going to get it done. Being able to say, okay, I'm going to take a 5-minute walk at lunch, or you can, go for a 10-minute walk after work. You could break it up into a bunch of different shorter episodes of exercise if that works better for you. But either way, I would say do your activity. If you can only stand up off the couch, stand up and sit down, stand up and sit down. Any movement you're doing is going to send a positive message to your body. So keep doing what you're doing, make some changes. If you can step up the exercise, do it. And be kind to yourself, be kind to others, laugh a little bit. Don't take life so serious sometimes. Take what you do seriously, but don't take yourself too seriously. Laugh at yourself sometimes. And I'm having a friend come on and tell an embarrassing story that happened to him, so that makes me happy. And that will come up in the next couple of weeks, I'm hoping. Carlos Merlot, some of you know him, about my friend who passed out while we were riding bikes and then had a crazy hospital experience. But he's also my good friend, and he's doing some great things down in Guatemala. I'm really excited that we're going to be able to go back and do some volunteer work down there with the great people in Guatemala this year. It's opened up again. So I still like to make fun of them and have fun with them too. So, find a good friend, find someone who's going to you're going to exercise with, and, have someone that says, hey, let's go. It's going to be rainy or cold, or you'll have an excuse, and, have someone who goes, no, we're going today, let's do it. And then you'll always be happy that you did it. So this is life-saving stuff, really. If you go through that list again of all the impacts, and there's way more than this, but I didn't want to bore you with all the details, but there's a ton of chronic conditions that improve with exercise. So get out there, go for a walk. You can listen to this podcast and walk around the block just as easy as you can sitting on your bottom at your desk. So hopefully you're out enjoying yourself, walking the countryside, doing something good, and be kind to yourself, be kind to others. And thank you again, Patreon supporters, for your support. I want to thank Health Code, and there's going to be another company who I'm going to have sponsoring too that I'm really excited about, but we'll talk about them next time. All right. God bless. Have a great day. Thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode. We greatly appreciate your support. We would greatly appreciate a positive thumbs up on all of the platforms like iTunes and Spotify, or wherever you're listening. And we just thank you for our Patreon supporters. We greatly appreciate your help in getting this message out. We think there's a lot of important information, and hopefully this helps you. Have a great day, and thank you for listening, and thank you for your support.